at all. This might take a while. Thought I'd get through it first. Dad's story begins on November 14, 1942. He was the second of 4 boys born to Frank Tiger and Norma Cunningham. Norman was first born, then Dad, Wayne, and baby brother Graham. Frank had worked a number of jobs over his time in Kai. He'd been Postmaster General and usher at the Kai Theatre, and drove the ice truck around town delivering ice to people's ice boxes. Norma was a shop assistant at the local bakery and also worked at the Kai Cannery, where Mum and Dad both later worked as well. Dad and his brothers were all born at the Kyabram B&A, the Bush Nurses Association Hospital. The B&A, I learned the other day, was later converted to the Kai Club, a den of drinking and gambling. This may go some way to explaining an almost genetic attraction most Cunninghams feel to a drink and a punt. Wandering into a TAB or a pub always felt like coming home, and now I know why. After leaving high school in Year 8, he embarked on a series of jobs that saw him working as a pastry chef, perhaps following the footsteps of his mum, who was a renowned pastry cook. He was a conductor on a steam train in Echuca and did a stint at North Melbourne train station, where he lived briefly in Newmarket with Grandma Booth. He flirted with 2 career paths briefly. One saw him riding his bike from Kai to Echuca each week to attend the Seventh-day Adventist Seminary, and another as a petty thief. His sister-in-law Judy tells me he once stole a bike in Echuca before inexplicably dumping it 100 metres down the road. It seemed neither the church nor criminal life would suit young Ken. Dad did stints on farms in Leachville, Elmore and Stanhope. He milked cows, was a farmhand, and was even a drover for a time. Let that sink in for a moment. Yes, my dad, my short dad, with brittle bones, was a drover, on horseback. I simply cannot picture him on horseback, so instead I imagine him as the world's only drover, whose mighty steed was a Shetland pony. His brother Graham said Dad's life on the farm came to an abrupt end with a phone call from the Stanhope property to his parents. I quote, "Come and get me, I broke my wrist, a cow kicked me. And I broke my ankle, I kicked a cow." Whilst working at the Kai Cannery in 1968, he met his future wife, his first of 2, of course. Keitha Duffy was on the first leg of a journey from Tauranga in New Zealand to Edmonton, Canada. She'd been riding to a pen pal in Canada since she was 12, and 16 years later was on her way to meet a friend. She'd come to Kai to meet Nellie Bruton, another pen friend, and to earn some money picking fruit and working at the cannery. It would take another 24 years for Mum to complete that journey to Canada. Dad and Mum were married at the Kai Methodist Church in 1969, and their reception was held in the RSL Hall. It was a vegetarian and alcohol-free celebration. Boy, how things later changed. Around that time, his older brother Norm was to marry a spunky young lady, yet unbeknownst to him, a somewhat shaky cook, Judy. Dad was in the bridal party, and as we all know, that means it's especially important to look your best for the big occasion. Shortly before the wedding, Dad took on a bet from his good and obviously scurrilous mate Col Evans. The bet was to see who could eat the most cocktail frankfurts. Dad lost, and to the utter horror of his mum Norma, and soon-to-be sister-in-law Judy, he fulfilled his end of the losing bet and duly shaved his hair off just days before the wedding. As luck would have it, Dad's head never grew back. Like many young men, Dad loved his cars, and perhaps his most beloved was his Zephyr. Graham told me of an occasion that he decided to borrow Dad's brown and pink Zephyr to impress a pretty young girl on a date. He said they ended up at a Kai Cannery and discovered Dad had been in the boot of the car the whole time. The story leaves me with 2 questions. What was Dad doing in the boot of his car? And 2, who the hell takes a pretty young girl on a date to a cannery? In another strange incident involving Dad and one of his beloved autos, he was driving a car full of mates up to Echuca when he lost control on a bend, went over an embankment, over a fence, and rolled the car several times. Dad swears black and blue that when he got out of the car, his shoes were still on, but his socks were in his pocket, and his mate's shirt was shredded, but his jacket was still on, still buttoned up, and absolutely untouched. One can only suffice that by this stage in Dad's life, he had in fact finally developed a liking for alcohol. Soon enough, Ken and Keitha welcomed their first child into the world, Kim, and 2 years later, in an attempt at redemption for that child, I was born. As if being born with 2 broken legs wasn't bad enough, in an apparent fit of self-induced comedic delight, Mum and Dad thought it would be wonderful if I joined the KC Club, Ken Cunningham, Keitha Cunningham, Kim Cunningham, by calling me Calvin Cunningham. Thankfully for me, by the time Dad went to fill out the form to register my name, he'd forgotten what I was meant to be called, and I was named Darren instead. In 1973, we moved to Melbourne and Dad became a trammy at Brunswick Tram Depot, working on the trams as a conductor and then a driver. Mum and Dad eventually separated, but he wouldn't be alone for long. Bob Dawson was a fellow trammy and they remained friends for more than 40 years. Bob was with Dad when he first laid eyes on Gwen, and he regaled me with this story, and I quote, "I recall not long after we started working on the trams at Brunswick, Ken was sitting with me in the meals room when the doors opened. He looked up to see who it was. As this new trainee conductress walked in, he smiled a little and said, 'I'm going to marry her. If that's not love at first sight.'" There was no such thing. They were married in 1981, and our family grew from Dad, Kim and I, to plus Gwen and her kids, Paul, Jody, Michelle and Tanya, who later grew up to become Auntie Meanie. We're crammed into a 3-bedroom place in Nicholson Street. I'm only reporting the facts, Tanya. Co-birthed until Dad and Gwen retired from the trams and moved to a caravan in Marimbula in 1992. They were as happy as 2 people could be. 2 people plus Odie, of course, their beloved big oaf of a dog. Gwen cleaned caravans and units to keep busy and earn some extra pokey money, and Dad got involved with the local Lions Club. He'd been a lion in Coburg for as long as I could remember, and somehow ended up volunteering with the Marimbula Royal Volunteer Coastal Patrol. Life was an absolute joy for them. After 6 years in Marimbula, Dad's health began to falter, and they made the difficult decision to return to Melbourne, where Dad could access the medical support he would increasingly need. The silver lining was being back amongst family, a family that was welcoming more partners, then more grandchildren into the fold. And with every new addition of a baby, Dad's heart melted just a little more. Sorry, I've got some dust in my eye. Stop it. In recent years, Dad confronted a seemingly never-ending series of health issues, and he took them on with a dignity and strength, and often stubbornness, that confounded and impressed us all. Jody got into many of his appointments, and Gwen provided a phenomenal level of love and care that allowed him to stay at home until the very end. Ruby, Mark and I dropped in for a visit last Sunday, and it was obvious that his days were fewer than more. Whilst he wasn't capable of much conversation, he did find the words to ask if I wanted a beer, and we shared our last VB. I even drank it from a can. How thoughtful am I? Within hours, he'd been taken by ambulance to hospital, and after moving him into the palliative care unit around midnight, Gwen, Kim and I stayed with him overnight. We were sitting with him at 8 a.m. Monday morning when he passed away peacefully. As well as sharing a bond as father and son, our bond was forged all the stronger from our shared experiences of living with and growing up with brittle bones. Dad had the most remarkable resilience. He was unflappable. His capacity to deal with chronic illness, chronic pain, and even being married to a rabid Bomber supporter was second to none. These are qualities I often see in James. He shares past capacity to deal with life's many searing challenges. Having brittle bones forces you to be resilient and pragmatic, because you know that no matter how great things are going in life, they will go to crap in a heartbeat, and no matter how bad things are in life, they will get better too. Often just having Dad around would be enough. The number of times I'd be laying in bed with a busted bone in the emergency department, at the children's hospital, the cubicle curtain would be pulled back and in would walk Dad. He'd sit down beside me, stroke my forehead. I'd smell the quick ease on his breath and I knew everything would be okay. Dad loved to laugh. One time he was off to one of his Lions conferences somewhere and someone decided it would be a good idea that Glenn and little I would go fishing. We pulled up near a lovely creek and we piled out. Dad carefully squeezed between the barbed wire fence and summoned Glenn to lift me over. The next minute my pants got caught on a bit of barbed wire and zap! The electric fence shot thousands of volts through me. Dad and Gwen suddenly both got the giggles whilst I was spread with a leg either side of the fence, my testicles in mortal danger. They'd laugh, their arms would weaken, zap, zap, zap. I'd scream, they'd lift me high, then start laughing and zap again. It's likely the reason my voice is so high-pitched to this day. Perhaps my fondest childhood memory is of the time Dad and Gramps were renovating a house in Kai, and I got to spend a few days on site with them, pulling up floorboards and generally making a pest of myself. After a few hours toiling away, we would end our day at the local pub. Dad would lift me onto a bar stool, and elbows resting on the bar, Dad, Gramps and I would share a few cold ones. They'd down beers while I knocked back lemonade with a squirt of raspberry cordial. What a grand time that was. One of Dad's enduring loves was Superman. The comics, the TV shows, the movies, anything Superman, he loved it. James shared this passion with Dad, and when the TV series Smallville which ran for 10 years, James and Dad would often natter excitedly about what they both watched. Did you turn this off, Gwen? Pa shared with James the first time he saw Superman fly, and James recalled later the look in Pa's face. He said he looked like an excited little boy, and of course he was. In hindsight, it should be no surprise that the breakable little boy would be drawn to the unbreakable superhero. I'll finish with a quote from the Superman movie. Dad, of course, would be chuffed. I'll set the scene. Marlon Brando, it's the start of the Superman movie. Marlon Brando is saying goodbye to his baby son, Superman, before he sends him across the galaxies to start a new life on Earth. And I quote, "You will travel far, my little Kal-El, but we will never leave you. We'll never leave you, even in the face of our deaths. You will make my strength your own. See my life through your eyes, as your life will be seen through mine. And the Son becomes the Father, and the Father the Son. Sadly, Dad fell to his kryptonite this week, and today we bid him farewell.